Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and martech. My name is Ethan Kramer Flood. I'm the principal forecasting writer here at eMarketer. Today, we'll learn how AI and untapped first-party data can transform your marketing effectiveness. I'm joined now by my two special guests. First, Jigna Desai, Head of Digital Analytics Strategy at the Aspen Group. Hello, Jigna.
Hello, everyone.
We also have Stacey Watkins, Director of Product Marketing at Invoca. Hello, Stacey.
Hi.
Jigna and Stacey have great presentation for you all, and afterwards, we'll open it up for questions about what you've learned. Please use the chat window to submit questions for the Q&A as we go and to communicate with your peers. With that, Stacey, take it away.
Thank you so much, Ethan. Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's content, I thought it might be nice to just level set on who we are here at Invoca and the Aspen Group. So Invoca has been in the AI game for several years, beginning with our proprietary and patented AI that we built, and now using that as a foundation, bringing in newer Gen AI technologies on top. And we do all of that to power our revenue execution platform that just quite simply allows sales and marketing teams to track and optimize buyer journeys so that they can drive more revenue. And Jigna is here from the Aspen Group, which is a conglomerate of healthcare brands that serve nearly all 50 states, over 35 patients per day, and over 8 million patients per year. So pretty impressive. Here's what the both of us are here to talk to you about today. So we'll begin by, of course, there are many trends that might shape next year, but we have isolated three that we feel are of particular import to marketers. We'll talk about those and how you can use those to come up with new ways to kind of meet the moment, right? What is a marketer asked over and over and over again? How can you do more with less? And so we'll talk about new ways to meet that challenge. And then we'll look at blockers to that. What might happen when you can't quite get there? And then what happens when those blocks are removed and you can really drive significant incremental improvements for the business. And then we'll give three quick takeaways and open it up for Q&A. Jigna and I will both be here to answer questions, and we're looking forward to that at the end of the session. We have just one poll and just one question. If you wouldn't mind taking a look, we'd love to know where you and your organization are kind of on the AI spectrum. Are you just dipping a toe in, or are you experts by now? And then Ethan will come back at the end of the session and share those results. So let's dive into these trends looking forward to next year. Now, thank you to our sponsor today, eMarketer. We see that digital ad spend is up across virtually all industries, which as a marketer is great news. Now, the big topic that seems to be continually on everybody's mind and on everybody's lips is AI. And interestingly, the excitement, the enthusiasm is not waning a bit. You'll see over in green that over 90% of the people that we surveyed, by the way, this is our own research report. You'll all be receiving a copy of it. There's some pretty interesting nuggets in there, but over 90% said that AI has a positive effect on marketing. They are more interested than they were last year, and they're more optimistic. So all of that optimism rolls into and is translating into more investment. And that is the opportunity for marketers, right? Not only is there increased AI usage, but that middle bullet there on the right is a big one. Over 90% of organizations will have an AI budget next year. That is a really big deal. Whereas in years previous, right, as marketers, we may have only been able to rely on MarTech budget or a marketing budget, but now there's this, in many organizations, a net new line item and budget that we can tap into. And so we'll dive more deeply into that one. And then that final point is over 90% of organizations are much more likely to increase their investment. So really positive signs. All of this enthusiasm and investment is also changing the way people buy MarTech, because it's not just about serving the needs of the marketing team, because now AI is a very likely part of any new solution that you will bring on board. Really interesting what's happening. And we absolutely see this at Invoca, that the interest in moving away from single use case solutions, more broad appeal solutions, is that interest is growing for a few reasons. One, not only can you do more with less with your budget, do more with less with the tech, right? That it can serve more than one department's goals. And you can also borrow from more than one department's budget, right? Not just marketing, not just sales, now also that AI line item. But look at that first bullet. The CFO is always or frequently the final decision maker in almost 80% of new solution onboarding. That is a huge deal. Over 70% of C-suite employees say there is a formal ROI goal attached to anything AI related. Now, I think when AI first came on the scene, a lot of us were kind of playing with it and seeing what it could do. And now that is really shifting to, hey, if you're spending money on it, we need to see that there's a return. So much so, final bullet on this slide, they are looking to see a return within the first 3 months. Now, not full ROI, but there should be some return visible in those first 3 months. So that's a bit of pressure, right? Let's talk about how marketers can use these trends, right? It is nothing new. When a marketer gets more budget, we know that there will be a bit more pressure to prove that return. However, what is new is that there is now budget available to give us the tools that we need to prove that return. And then that third trend, I really feel like is kind of like a guidepost. Remember that there are a lot more C-suite executive eyeballs on these purchases, these new solutions we're onboarding. And so let's make sure we're confident that they can deliver that ROI and deliver it fairly quickly. So the place we don't want to end up as marketers is this place of uncertainty. We cannot meet that moment if we're asking, listen, do I understand where my friction and leak points are in the funnel? If I don't, I can't prove ROI. Are my AI investments driving measurable, significant results? If they aren't, I can't prove that ROI, right? Remembering that kind of added pressure in the buyer committee from the C-suite that might not have been there, might have just been the CMO in years previous, but now increasingly more pressure. And then finally, are we looking at solutions that will give us the biggest bang for our buck? Again, not just a single use case solution for marketing, but a wider sense of appeal. And then remember, we're not just talking about what's good for the marketing team and the business, it's also personal, right? 94% of hiring managers say that AI skills will be critical in decision making, right? So all of us as individual marketers it's incumbent upon us, necessary for us to adopt these skills. There's still a decent chunk of fear, right? 40% still believe that AI will replace more jobs than it creates. Now, listen, we don't know if that's how it will play out or not, but the best antidote to that fear is being AI savvy, is having a deep understanding of that technology. And then it may hurt career advancement, right? About 25% said they expect their career to slow if they don't have these skills to help move it forward. So let's talk about how, as marketers, we can capitalize on these new ways to meet the moment. So let's look at a typical modern buyer journey, which we certainly know is not linear. We're seeing increasingly that it might begin on connected TV, right? You might be watching TV on a Roku, you see an ad, that might prompt you to reach over to the coffee table and grab your phone. This particular buyer journey is using our fictitious telco business. Maybe I navigate over, or the consumer navigates over onto the website, and then tomorrow during a lunch hour, that memory hits and you go, oh yeah, I'm moving. I really want to see about that new TV and internet bundle. Now, the specific kinds of purchases I'd like to talk about today are called considered purchases. They are purchases you have to consider before making. They will be with you a long time. So we're not talking about, buying a pair of jeans or a t-shirt. We're talking about new internet and TV. We're talking about refinancing your home or booking extended international travel. And for those considered purchases, the phone call is very often part of that buyer journey. And the reason is the consumer wants it all. They want freedom and autonomy on the front half of their buyer journey to do research and discovery. But when they need help or when they have a question, they want a person there. And often that human assistance, that human touch is the tipping point to the conversion event, whether it's a purchase or a quote or an appointment set like at Aspen Group with a healthcare appointment. This is true so much so that Google came out with a quote and said that, listen, phone calls convert 3x over web clicks. Now, you're looking at a lot of data on this slide, and certainly we won't go through it all. The point here is this is kind of a slice of those considered purchase industries, and you can see the significance that phone calls hold to driving revenue for these kinds of businesses. So the takeaway here for the marketer is there's a lot of revenue being driven over the phone. And accordingly, there's data attached to that revenue. What are the ads and clicks and campaigns that drive the web visits, that drive the phone calls, and which of those calls are driving conversions? So as a marketer, you must ask yourself, do I have access to lead and conversion data from every channel, not just on digital? So let's look at what happens when you don't. What blocks getting that data? The truth is the modern buyer journey very often spans online to off, but can very frequently be disconnected because while marketers are really fantastic at tracking digital events, at some point, again, usually that tipping point when someone picks up the phone, that's when the data trail goes cold. And they're left wondering, right? Did that consumer go to my competitor and purchase? Did they just drop off and didn't buy from anyone? Or did they simply pick up the phone and purchase, but I can't prove it? I don't have the data that that event occurred. And that's called the marketing data blind spot. And here's the easiest way to illustrate it. So let's say you're tracking your keywords and you look at this and you say, listen, Corp Bank Mortgage drove almost 200 calls. That looks great. I'm going to throw some more budget on that, on those set of keywords. Now, remember, we're not in the business of driving calls. We are in the business of driving revenue conversions wherever they may occur. And at Invoca, we like to use this analogy of simply turning on the lights so that you can see what's actually happening over the phone. And when you do that, you see that actual conversions are most prevalent with first-time mortgage. And so without that insight, when you're stuck in that data blind spot, you might be throwing budget over at Corp Bank Mortgage, which has a fairly low conversion rate as compared to how many calls it's driving. So what are the downstream effects of that? Because it's true that the conversions are still occurring, but the costly piece to the business is when you don't have the data to prove it. And so here's what that looks like. First of all, your really important marketing metrics like CPA and return on ad spend are incorrect because you have acquisitions that are occurring in the contact center, but they are not being attributed back to your marketing efforts. So your CPA is overinflated. Your return on ad spend is undercounted because, again, there's return happening in the contact center that you can't account for. It's actually a really good problem for a marketer to have. You're actually more successful than you think you are. Your CPA is lower, your return is higher, but you don't have the data to defend your spend. What that means is when your CPA and return on ad spend metrics are incorrect, you can't accurately optimize your campaigns. So just like in that last slide that we looked at, you might be throwing budget on the wrong keywords and ads and campaigns. Without that appropriate optimization, you're wasting ad spend and you cannot optimize your campaigns to ultimately drive more conversions. And then the big one here is you simply cannot prove the actual impact you are having on the business as a marketer. So Let's look at the opposite of this. Let's look at that same buyer journey, but this time when you have access to all of that data. So this is pretty much that same journey we looked at a minute ago, although this one starts with a Google search. And what you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen is the journey will progress, and then we'll look at all of the data that gets captured, again, from this one single consumer. So the Google search, uh, ends the consumer finding iTelecom. They click on that Google ad and they land on the website. Now, notice that a phone call hasn't occurred, but Invoca has already been able to capture the keywords, the Google click ID because the consumer clicked on the ad, the campaign name, and then also a web visitor ID has been assigned. And so we move through this journey. It looks like this consumer is trying to see if there's availability in Denver, Colorado. And the good news is, yep, there's a location near them, and you can see we captured the serviceable address. They move through and they find this TV and high-speed internet bundle that they like, and they actually go so far as to put it in the cart. And we see that the product, the internet and TV bundle, is in the cart. And now it's time to fill out all of the information to make the purchase. And now, for some reason, a phone call has occurred. Really important data point here. We understand what page drove the call. As a marketer, when you know that, you can begin to diagnose and fix reasons that might be driving calls on your digital buy flow. You can also, because as you'll see here in a minute, we'll get the call outcome. For conversions that happen that begin on digital, you'll understand where you might want to actually encourage a phone call for things like upsell opportunities. So understanding what pages rather on your website drive phone calls is super important. And so we see that it was Jane that is the consumer here. And now the phone call progresses and AI is applied to the call through things like AI-driven transcripts and phone call recordings. And so as the call continues, we see that Jane was interested in moving. She isn't a repeat caller. Again, really critical data point. If we see at the end that she has converted on the first time that she picked up the phone to call, that's a great thing to know. Let's look for audiences that look like Jane, right? As the call continues, you can see that she was interested in the Denver, Colorado location, that the call was answered by a live person. So as a marketer, if you're driving high value phone leads, it's really important that you know that a live person is answering the phone. The call was a lead. It wasn't Jane asking if that location was open on the weekends. So you know it was a potentially revenue generating call. And then the big one here, yes, the conversion event, which here is a new service activation, happened. Now, it's great to have this level of data for a single session. What is even better is having this level of data at scale on every single inbound phone call, because then you can inject that first party data that, by the way, you didn't have access to before, right? This is a brand new source of first party data that you can inject back into your MarTech stack. So, for example, Google Ads, you may have previously only been able to track what happened on digital. Now you get full attribution. You can understand what conversions are happening over the phone. And now everything is more accurate. Now your Adobe Analytics data is more accurate. Your revenue reporting, closed loop revenue reporting in Salesforce is more accurate. You can push this data to Five9 or Genesis or another contact center solution. It's as if it lifts all boats, right? This new source of data. And remember, everything that you see in this kind of red box here is what's trapped in that marketing blind spot. And that's why it's so costly. So just a couple quick examples here. First step is always grab that. You finally now have access to phone data. Now you get true attribution so you can optimize your keywords, your ads, your campaigns, stop wasting ad spend and get your campaigns optimized so they ultimately drive more revenue. And then this is a big one here, right? Really important to have accurate retargeting and suppression files. We've all had that experience where you buy something and then that same company serves you an ad. Not only is that super expensive for the company, it's a terrible new customer experience. And so what we can learn over time is, oh, that person just converted over the phone. They get automatically moved into my suppression file. But if this had been that Jane didn't convert, 100% we know she's worth spending the money to retarget. It also has an effect on your lookalike audiences. Again, let's start targeting audiences that look more like Jane because she had a great experience and she converted at the end. So quickly here's what it looks like when that blind spot gets eliminated. You get true attribution from online to offline. That means you can optimize your campaigns correctly, lower your acquisition costs, get that new fresh source of first party data into your conversion and revenue reporting, reduce all that wasted ad spend, and then really do what every marketer wants to do, right? Let me get the right ad in front of the right person at the right time. I'd love your commentary here, Jigna, on anything you'd love to add from the Aspen Dental perspective.
Definitely. I think every single box you have here, Stacey, we have been very much able to use it, right? Like we get the closed loop attribution. As you mentioned, the buyer journey is never linear, right? So we understand if the user left us in the online funnel and if they ended up converting in the call center, we have that closed loop attribution. We also have media integrations for our media buying platforms that allows us not only to understand the holistic consumer buying journey, but also we're able to improve the efficacy of our campaigns and optimize them, reduce our cost per acquisition. And all of this is not happening just for a single buyer journey. It is happening at a scale across pretty much all of our media campaigns.
Nice. Okay, well, that leads us nicely into our conversation. So at this point, I'd love to kind of share the stage with Jigna and let's talk about specifically the Aspen Group experience. When Jigna and I were preparing for this session, this is a direct quote from her, and we were just kind of casually discussing things and what we wanted to talk about. And she said, listen, when you're stuck in the blind spot, you're bleeding money. And that really struck me. That's a great quote, right? For Aspen Dental, Invoca is a need to have, not a nice to have. And so I think it's incumbent upon us now, Jigna, to kind of put our money where our mouth is and really prove that. So I wonder if you could talk about what it meant to have complete attribution, especially since you have so many locations.
Definitely. So when I say complete attribution, we are completely having visibility into our patient's journey, closed loop attribution, and we are able to use that continuous cycle of understanding of the buyer journeys, online, offline, down to the keyword level. I would say we understand where the callers are coming from, which campaigns they are coming from, and we also understand the conversion rate. So going back to your example of the bank, the calls, right? If you think about various conversion events, calls is one data point, but then also through the AI signal and the natural language processing, we also understand which of the calls are actually converting into our successful events. So that is a very much useful for us to understand our holistic buyer journey.
Nice. And then this is actually my favorite, this one in the middle, the way that you have found to really kind of fast track your highest value callers. So maybe give us a bit of detail on this one.
Sure. So we are in the business, we are a dental service organization, right? So we are in the business to serve our patients' need, be it new or current patients, right? So if you think about it, when you think about your existing patient journey, they would have questions around, hey, do you take insurance? Do you take Medicaid? Or they might want to know questions around, are you open? What are your open dates and times for a particular location, right? So in that, IVR has many options, right? So select one for new patient, two for billing, right? And it has like multiple options. So what we understood with the continuous understanding of the data and the insights that the platform is giving us, we understood that if we were to divert our callers, high intent callers, to a priority queue. That would be helping us with not only increasing the conversion rate, but also allowing the patient a very seamless and a quick turnaround. So this led to us coming up with implementation of our shortened IVRs for several of our high intent callers and various marketing channels.
So I think you said it's just a 2-button, push 1 or 2, and then a second push, and then you get directly to a live person. So pretty quickly.
Yes.
And then accordingly, that sort of makes a much better patient experience. And those, less transfers, less hold times, less time in the IVR translates into more appointments booked, which is more conversions.
Yes.
So let's talk about, I know you said in our planning sessions that you started with Aspen Dental, but now you're adopting this across all of your brands, which is exciting. But let's talk about kind of the ways this was able to happen.
Sure.
One is you really got a lot of publicity, I guess, on your Invoca data, that first point.
Yeah. So I would like to mention, I firmly believe that what gets measured gets managed, right? So going back to the closed loop attribution, we have weekly business review meetings where most of our CMOs and other leadership teams are present. So we go over Invoca data, and the insights that the data was giving us at the level of granularity that we were able to present led to the expansion of adopting the Invoca data across several of our other sister brands.
And then I'm thinking about that third trend that we talked about earlier, which is like time to value, right? Like I need some ROI quickly here if I'm going to be approved to bring on this new tool. So talk about this phenomenon of the second point about how quickly you started getting data and how meaningful that was.
Yeah. So when we scaled Invoca across one of our brands, the dental implant brand, Clear Choice, what we learned is within hours of implementing the platform, we were able to generate a report that would give us insights at, okay, which landing pages are the callers coming from, which locations are the callers, like where are the friction points on the online journey, and which locations are we getting the most calls from. And we are also able to look at the AI call summaries to understand what is it that the caller is calling us for. So that was very, very instrumental in then further scaling up the program where we implemented it on many other marketing channels.
Nice. And then there's kind of an interesting twist to this third one. We talk all the time about being able to distinguish revenue generating versus support or non-revenue generating calls, but you actually are using Invoca also to make sure that you're filtering out all of those spam calls so that your agents can get directly to patients.
Yes, I would like to emphasize here that we continuously look at data, right? We are a data-driven organization, performance-driven organization. So we continuously look at the data and the throughput that our marketing dollars are fetching us, right? One of the key learnings, and this is very recent, where we identified that the conversion rate for a particular campaign was like down significantly. And then upon looking at the data, we understood that we were getting a lot of spam calls. One of the great features that we just enabled is we could block robocalls. So that way we are able to make sure we don't get lower quality calls in the call center queue.
Nice. I'm being mindful of time, but I don't want to cut short this slide. I love what this has to say. Another thing that came up when we were discussing how to present your success story was about how you think, oh, these are the reasons I want to work with Invoca, but once you get that data in hand, it sort of opens up new ways. And I think you did a great job talking about this first one. Maybe we won't spend time here understanding at each location where your calls were coming from. And then obviously the quality of those calls, right? Which locations are driving the highest quality calls. The second one here, I think, is interesting because it also has an effect on staffing, right? If your calls are spiking, you have to understand if that's an anomaly or if you really need to staff up. And so I wonder if you would just take a minute to talk about that.
Sure. So we, like our call center teams, look at call volumes day over day, week over week, comparing it to prior year to plan, right? 7 days to Sunday. And then that informs future agent and staff planning, right? So one of the things that recently we were able to quickly diagnose was we saw a call volume spike happening, comparing it to the same day prior year. And it took us like literally minutes, not even hours, to understand whether media was driving that call spike or there was a different reason. So I would say AI and the help of natural language processing and all the data. So going back to the data blind spot, I would say because we have enabled our programs, our marketing programs with such rich data, which is helping us get to this level of quick turnarounds to
Yeah,
understand.
that's so great. And then we don't need to spend a lot of time on the third one, but it's nice. I think probably for you, it's nice to be the person that has the data, and then you're kind of seen as the expert at Aspen. That word of mouth, like, oh, have you seen that data that Jigna has? I think that's a nice place to be. Okay. How all of you as attendees can take action. We're getting close to wrapping up here. So very quickly, remember that first trend, great news in terms of budgets for digital ad spend. Budgets are up, and while the pressure to deliver will increase when the budget increases, remember that there's this brand new opportunity, which is an AI-powered solution, which happily seems to be coming along with a new budget to tap into to onboard it. And then again, just remember that use that third trend as a guidepost that anything you onboard should be able to show ROI and show it quickly, because there will be more sort of C-level eyeballs on any solutions that we as marketers bring on board. Okay, before we dive into Q&A, I think Ethan is here with some poll results.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, that was great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Good job. Really interesting stuff. But yeah, we let's take a look at the results. So just a reminder. So the question was, are you currently exploring new AI tools to enhance your marketing efforts? And the results, drum roll please. So about 44% of folks said yes to improve team efficiency. About 22% said yes to make campaigns more effective. About 22% said not yet, but they are curious. About 11% said they're not sure and still sort of exploring. And nobody, 0%, said just flat out no. Maybe not surprising in this
Right.
moment in time. I think eMarketer is probably a yes on both 1 and 2. But what do you think about those results?
Uh, I think that sounds about right. I think by this point, I would have been surprised if somebody said not at all, right? I think all of us have dabbled in ChatGPT, or, right, how can I write that blog more quickly or that email draft more quickly, et cetera. So, but I do think we're at a bit of an inflection point where it's moving from kind of dabbling or playing around to kind of getting serious about it. Okay. Do we have any questions from the attendees that we can answer?
We do indeed, and we still have some time, and a bunch
Okay,
came
great.
in. So let's just dive into those. First one is for Jigna, actually. How has Invoca changed the way you work?
I would say I have become the subject matter expert as it pertains to Invoca, and that has led to scaling of and adoption of using the platform and its AI technology across all of our sister brands.
So you're kind of the AI expert in that regard, right? At least somewhat.
Yes, and I would say outside of this, we also have implemented our AI technology via chats on the websites, and there are a lot of talks around chirp, like using AI and Gen AI.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. What else?
Great. And Stacey, for you, how does a phone conversation link to the digital journey? And what if that journey spans multiple devices?
Right. The reason that Invoca is able to capture the digital journey that drove the phone call is by virtue of our own technology. We're able to capture those digital footsteps and then stitch it together with the phone call. And so that's how you get that sort of end-to-end visibility, we would say, from click to call to conversion.
Hmm, got it. Another one for you, Stacey, I think. Uh, what are some alternatives if we don't want to use dynamic number insertion, DNI?
Yeah. So Invoca also offers static numbers, and in fact, many of our customers use those on things like catalogs or direct mail or even a static number on a website. The thing that dynamic number insertion gives you is session level attribution. A static number will only give you aggregate, right? Everybody that calls that static number is aggregated. To get session level, like we looked at in the presentation, that's the benefit of dynamic number insertion. Each web session has, or mobile session, et cetera, has a different number, and so a different set of data.
Mhm. Got it.
I would like to add a real use case we have been using with static
Oh,
phone
good.
numbers, if that's okay with the team. So recently we implemented a DRTV campaign, and we wanted to understand because the test was going to be implemented, and we wanted to have measurable results across our test and control markets. So the level of granularity we were able to implement, like which location, which TV station, creative, ad copy, and you could apply all these various dimensions you want to have your data to make it more rich, and still use the static number insertion functionality.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. And then Jigna, we actually have another one for you. I think you touched on some of this on and off, but I'll throw it back to you anyway. What are your biggest marketing challenges, and how are you tackling these to turn your target market into customers?
So the biggest marketing challenges right now, as you think, we are a healthcare organization, right? So making sure we are securing the patient data and not allowing it to be sent to platforms that are not HIPAA compliant. That is one of the, I would say it's a challenge and an opportunity, because that is allowing us to make sure we are continuously looking at our data and making sure it's compliant 7 days to Sunday.
That is the first conversation we have with every one of our healthcare customers is around HIPAA compliance and data security. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So, Stacey, here's a good one then. How do health-related industries handle retargeting considering the privacy challenges in this field?
Yeah, I almost think, Jigna, you can take that one. We talked about that planning this session. You should take this one.
Sure, I think so. As I would think of TAG as a very forward-looking organization, right? So we always make sure we plan ahead of time. Right now, we are planning our data strategies to implement platforms that will allow us to be very nimble as it pertains to, privacy landscape. We use OneTrust, which is one of the standard consent management tools in the industry, to make sure when the visitor is on the website, we honor the user's consumer preferences, right? And make sure we make sure that we track the user only if they have given us their consent to track them.
But you are not allowed to retarget specifically. That's
No,
correct, right? Yeah,
no.
healthcare companies cannot retarget.
We are not allowed to, and that is one of the things Google. So some of the things Google has their own ways of deciding that a particular healthcare organization will fall under whether this organization is allowed to retarget or not. So we are a part of the block list where we cannot retarget our patient.
Right.
Got it. Let's see, Stacey, is Invoca tracking based on first click?
Oh, interesting. Mm, I'm trying to think the best way to answer this.
They got you.
No, it is not based on first click. And that without getting overly technical, let's just say no. And then actually just grab we'll follow up with that person directly and get a little more substantive answer.
Okay, great. Jigna, what insights have you gained from setting up Invoca, and what types of data were you able to uncover from your blind spots?
Wow, we have been using Invoca. Our implementation is very matured. I would say I would start with one of the biggest insights we get is call conversion rate, right? So we use Invoca's AI signal technology, and we continuously fine tune the signal. So think of signals as segmenting your calls into the respective success outcomes that you want for your respective businesses, right? So the way we look at it is, for instance, we want to understand, are our patients able to go through the funnel seamlessly and able to book the appointment where they are available, right? So one of the things we look at is calling pages. What are the friction points? Where is the user? Because the end goal for us is to make sure there is a seamless online buying experience. But as Stacey mentioned, right, there are friction points on the website where the user would want to talk to a live agent. So one of the biggest things I think insights we get is, what is the call ratio by each calling page? We also try to understand what type of calls are we getting, right? Are they more of existing patients, new patients? We also try to understand the type of service lines that the calls are getting, and the conversion rate by each media channel down to the keyword level. So we also have a lot of campaigns where we use one-to-one, because we are very much geolocated. So for our geolocations, we use static technology, and then for the call extensions or many others, we use dynamic number insertion. So it allows us to understand the data at a session level.
Great. Thanks. I think we only have time for one more. This has been great, though. And Jigna, actually, you're going to finish up for us. This person is looking for buy-in from the C-suite. What advice can you give on that?
No pressure, Jigna.
I think one of the things I would say is, if you are currently using a call tracking platform, then use the insights. If you're not, then my biggest tagline I use is, what gets measured gets managed. For me, we were early adopters of the platform, so I did not have to go through that. But I definitely think if you can find any more, data points or data blind spots, right? If you're not using a call tracking platform, then you will not be able to get the data that we are talking about, but maybe use data blind spots, like the friction points that your online campaigns are seeing, and maybe see you can talk to the leadership team to understand that if you had insights and visibility into what is happening when the buyer or the site visitor abandons the cart, and then what happens, that is a big data blind spot, I would say. So understanding what portion of your online clicks and site visits are converting into calls is one of the keys to then ultimately looking at those 6 boxes that Stacey had, where you campaign optimization and becoming more matured in your.
Well, Stacey, Jigna, thank you again for this great content and for answering all those questions from our audience. We really do appreciate it. We got to wrap up, but thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Ethan, and thanks so much to our longtime customer, Jigna. It's been a pleasure working on and delivering this session. And thanks to all the attendees for joining us today.
Thank you, both of you.
Absolutely. So thanks, everyone. Before we wrap up, let me take a moment quickly just to tell you about eMarketer's other media channels. Please do visit emarketer.com to register for upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars and to sign up for our newsletters. Also, don't forget to tune in to Behind the Numbers, eMarketer's daily podcast, which you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. Keep an eye on your email for the link to today's playback. And of course, feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. Thank you all for your time. Thanks again to Jigna Stacey and the team at Invoca, and of course, our eMarketer studio team has been behind the scenes this whole time for making this webinar possible. We will see you all on the next Tech Talk.